Tonight, another apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump, a man arrested after allegedly targeting the former president. I'm Talissa Siganto. Welcome to ABC News. The Queensland Truth and Healing Inquiry gets underway in Brisbane. Elizabeth Debicki takes out Australia's only Emmy for her portrayal of Princess Diana. And Oscar Piastri's second Grand Prix win, securing a big move for McLaren. Good evening. Donald Trump has survived another apparent assassination attempt. This time, the Republican nominee for president was on his golf course in Florida when a Secret Service agent opened fire at a man believed to be holding an assault rifle. The suspect has been arrested and identified as authorities probe a motive just 7 weeks out from Election Day. North America correspondent Barbara Miller is in West Palm Beach, Florida.
I think one has like a rifle pointed to the car or something.
The moment when another apparent assassination attempt on the former president ends in an arrest.
They got 30 vehicles blocking the highway.
The suspect is taken into custody after seemingly trying to flee. Authorities allege the man was hiding in bushes near Donald Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida, when a Secret Service agent noticed the barrel of a gun sticking out.
We are not sure right now if the individual was able to take a shot at our agents.
Donald Trump was a short distance behind the agent who opened fire.
They have an agent that jumps one hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual.
Had he not been seen, he could have had a clear shot.
Between 300 and 500 yards, but with a rifle and a scope like that, that's not a long distance.
Police say the suspect ditched his weapons, an AK-47, a GoPro camera, scope and 2 backpacks as he fled the scene. US media have identified the suspect as 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh, a man with strong views on world politics. He had apparently travelled to Ukraine after the Russian invasion and was turned down when he tried to sign up to fight.
I have no military experience, so they're like, you're not an ideal candidate.
But he seemingly ran this website encouraging Westerners to fight for Ukraine, and another advocating for an international legion for Taiwan.
Thank you.
This comes only 2 months after Donald Trump narrowly escaped death when a gunman opened fire at a rally in Pennsylvania. The head of the Secret Service resigned after it, admitting it was the agency's worst failure in decades. There will now be more questions about how someone could have been close enough to threaten the former president's life again.
He's not the sitting president. If he was, we would have had this entire golf course around it. But because he's not, the security is limited to the areas that the Secret Service deems possible.
President Joe Biden issued a statement saying he had directed his team to ensure the former president's continued safety. Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, echoed those sentiments, writing, "Violence has no place in America." The Republicans' running mate, J.D. Vance, says he spoke to Mr. Trump before the news was public and that Mr. Trump was amazingly in good spirits. In a post on social media, the Republican leader thanked people for their concern and well wishes and reiterated that he was safe, praising law enforcement for its response. Donald Trump has events scheduled this week, including a town hall in Michigan in a couple of days' time. And pushing ahead would fit with the fighting stance his supporters have come to expect from him. But it's hard to see how events here would not have some impact on campaigning over the next 50 days until the election. As for the polls, well, they've shown very little movement through a previous assassination attempt, a change of candidate, and 2 noteworthy debates. All the signs are that despite its remarkable twists and turns, 2024 remains a very close race. Barbara Miller, ABC News, West Palm Beach, Florida.
The federal opposition and the Greens are set to block one of the government's housing packages in the Senate, arguing it will do little to help affordability across the country. But the Prime Minister believes it's just political posturing, describing the Senate as obstructing his government's agenda. From Canberra, political reporter Matthew Doran.
Australia's suburbs are growing.
These beautiful homes where we've got lots of new families moving in.
But not fast enough. The government insists it's drawn up the plans to help.
Something that should frankly have sailed through the parliament before now.
The Prime Minister pressuring the Senate to back his help to buy legislation, which would allow the government to take a share of up to 40% of a house for 40,000 low-income households.
This is a scheme where the government comes in as the bank of mum and dad.
These two bills that are before the Senate today aren't going to make a whit of difference to the number of people that own their own home.
The government insisting the Greens in the Senate are the impediment to progress.
Can they get anything done this week?
The Greens in turn accusing Anthony Albanese of taking inspiration from an unlikely source.
Our previous Prime Minister was a bulldozer. Let's not forget, that didn't end so well.
I mean, give us all a break, really.
The fiery debate spilling over in the chamber.
The government is pulling a political stunt.
Labor labelling the Greens' ongoing opposition to the proposal as evidence they're in cahoots with the opposition leader, Peter Dutton.
And you empower him. You empower him.
Now, this is such good policy. It was part of the Greens election platform in 2022.
Our position that we took to the election was very different. It was a much bigger government-backed and government-owned scheme.
Two Albanese government housing policies hang in the balance, and there is little doubt the government would like to see both through Parliament. But if the current impasse continues, the shape of an argument which will rage through an election campaign can be made out. Labor portraying the Greens as grandstanding obstructionists, while the Greens claim the government is too timid. On current indications, it could take voters to break the deadlock. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Canberra.
Indigenous elder Brian Gray was a stolen child, forced to live in a Rockhampton orphanage for more than a decade. His account of humiliating punishments and lies about his identity will be one of many told at Queensland's Truth Inquiry, which started in Brisbane today. Here's National Indigenous correspondent Carly Williams, and a warning, some details in this story may be distressing.
Remember, protect yourself at all times.
Uncle Brian learned early to fight for himself.
Ever since I left the orphanage at the age of 15, I think, my life just went downward spiral, you know, because I didn't have any family or anything.
Stolen at age 4, Uncle Brian spent more than a decade at St George's Home, a central Queensland orphanage run by the Anglican Church, now closed.
Shameful punishments where, you know, like talking in the bedrooms at night, you'd be all lined up and marched one by one down to the toilet and get your head flushed in there. It's quite traumatising, actually.
The Anglican Diocese of Rockhampton told the ABC the actions are unacceptable, no matter the time.
It's this truth Uncle Brian plans to share with Queensland's Truth and Healing Inquiry, starting today here in Brisbane.
The hearings are part of the Queensland Government's Path to Treaty Act.
A focus on reconciliation and a focus on healing. And those are really strong foundations which the inquiry will continue to achieve over the next 3 years.
But there are fears if the LNP win next month's state election, it may not make it that far.
So you still intend to repeal treaty laws?
Yes.
Uncle Brian Gray says yanking the inquiry would be a kick in the guts.
Unless you've got a safe environment and a platform to speak and have a voice, how can you be healed?
There's a Bible phrase, the truth will set you free. But Uncle Brian says it'll disturb you first.
I'm starting to win a few rounds, you know what I mean? And make peace with myself.
Witness statements to the inquiry will begin on Wednesday. Carly Williams, ABC News.
With less than 6 weeks until the state election, the major parties are well and truly in campaign mode. The Premier was in Brisbane talking cost of living support, while the opposition leader visited Cairns to announce plans for 2 youth justice schools if elected.
Non-passengers. How are you? It's full steam ahead on the unofficial election campaign. With the clock ticking, both major parties fanned out across the state to sell their message. The Premier riding the rails, not missing a chance to remind voters of his government's public transport initiative.
I caught the train in from Mango Hill to here at Bowen Hills today. It cost me just 50 cents.
24 hours after Labor and the LNP both committed to keep the cheap fares in place if elected next month, Mr Miles was also driving home another measure, the 20% cut to car registration for 12 months.
It applies to rego payments starting today.
And revving up his attacks on the LNP.
My opponent is determined to be as invisible as possible, to be as small a target as possible.
Though it was a bit hard to miss the LNP's campaign bus rolling into Rockhampton.
We've driven on the Bruce from Brisbane over the last couple of days, taking the LNP's Right Plan for Queensland's Future on the Bruce Highway into regional Queensland. And it's great to be in Rockhampton today.
Its leader, David Crisafulli, was 1,000 kilometres away in Cairns, making an election pledge for new specialist youth justice schools. The LNP says it would build 2 schools in Cairns and the southeast at a cost of $40 million to open from 2026. The facilities would be for high-risk teen offenders on youth justice orders, with 12 hours of daily supervision 5 days a week.
They will have a focus on making sure that kids have discipline and structure in their life.
The state government says it already has pathway colleges to support students who have disengaged from mainstream school, which can include those in the youth justice system. But the LNP insists their model hasn't been done in Queensland before.
This is a Queensland first.
The official campaign will kick off in a fortnight. Kate McKenna, ABC News.
Shogun has dominated this year's Emmy Awards in LA, becoming the first non-English language series to win Best Drama. Actress Elizabeth Debicki was the only Australian winner, picking up a gong for her portrayal of Princess Diana.
Capturing the essence of the People's Princess won Elizabeth Debicki the crown for Best Supporting Actress.
Playing this part based on this unparalleled, incredible human being has been my great privilege. It has been a gift.
But the night belonged to Shogun. The historic Japanese epic took home a record haul of 18 awards, including Best Drama.
You guys greenlit a very expensive, subtitled Japanese period piece whose central climax revolves around a poetry competition. I have no idea why you did that.
While its 2 leads became the first Japanese actors to win Emmys. The dark drama Baby Reindeer turned its creators' disturbing life experiences into TV gold.
Take risks, push boundaries, explore the uncomfortable, dare to fail in order to achieve.
Hacks was a surprise winner for Best Comedy, with an acting gong for its lead.
The amazing Jean Smart.
I appreciate this because I just don't get enough attention.
And there was another standing ovation as movie star Jodie Foster won her first Emmy for True Detective.
Well, this is an incredibly emotional moment.
And chaotic kitchen series The Bear served up 11 awards.
To all the Latinas who are looking at me, keep believing and vote. Vote for your rights.
In an Emmy field that was more diverse than ever. Sarah Geraghty, ABC News.
On this day, 49 years ago, the Australian flag was lowered in Papua New Guinea's capital to mark the end of 7 decades of colonial rule. To mark the Independence Day, tens of thousands turned out across the country as PNG celebrates progress and the challenges ahead. ABC correspondent Marion Farr reports from Port Moresby.
The celebrations started early with fireworks over the capital. And as dawn broke this morning, whistles and cheers greeted the raising of PNG's flag on Independence Hill. A country of hundreds of tribes united.
It was not too long ago when our fathers and mothers decided to forge the most diverse nation on the face of planet Earth into one unity.
On this day in 1975, the Australian flag was lowered for the final time. It marked the end of almost a century of colonial rule under Germany, Britain and then Australia.
Gough Whitlam said it was his proudest achievement in office to have birthed Papua New Guinean independence, and I think that's a wonderful legacy.
People here couldn't agree more.
Today we are celebrating independence today. We're so very happy here and so excited here.
I feel proud of my country, Papua New Guinea, because that's the time where people come together, celebrate in culture.
What you're seeing here is just a taste of what's to come, with Papua New Guinea already gearing up for its 50th anniversary of independence next year. It'll be a time to reflect on how far the country has come and the ongoing challenges it faces, such as unemployment, poverty and women's rights.
This generation, under my words, pledge that we will not let the dream go to waste, but we will do our absolute best to ensure we pass on a better PNG to our children.
Determination and hope for a young nation looking towards the future. Marion Farr, ABC News, Port Moresby.
2024 has been dubbed the year of TikTok elections by social media experts. In the United States, hundreds of content creators were invited to the Democratic National Convention last month, while back home, the Queensland Premier is leaning in on influencers to build his profile.
From sculling beers with podcasters,
Premier, let's go. Oh, hi.
to filming with TikTokers, the Queensland Premier has been making an impression on social media.
The number one question people kept asking was, how much does the Premier bench press? So wondering.
We've seen in the last 12 months a significant increase in the use of TikTok as a campaigning tool.
Worldwide, politicians are using social media influencers to rally behind them. More than 200 content creators were invited to the Democratic National Convention, pushing the Democrats' message to their millions of followers. Social media experts are calling 2024 the year of the TikTok elections, as politicians move away from costly television adverts and focus on building their social media profiles. Queensland looks to be following that trend.
The two political leaders have got their own TikTok accounts and they're really developing this political authenticity.
Stephen Miles has been collaborating with influencers.
Very mindful.
Very considerate.
While the state opposition leader likes to share dad jokes.
I know what slay means. It's if it's cool, if something's brilliant, slay.
The advice for social media users:
not everything we see online is true or a real representation of reality, and we need to apply that same kind of critical thinking to our politicians.
The question is, will the social media experiment help?
Obviously, the election will be the true test of that.
Sarah Richards, ABC News, Brisbane.
To finance now, here's David Chow.
Well, the share market was just a whisker away from hitting a new record, with the All Ords up by 0.2%. But I'm sure we all remember what happened a month and a half ago when we last reached those levels of exuberance. Now, this Thursday's US interest rate decision appears to be behind today's relative optimism. There's no question there'll be a rate reduction, but here, size matters. The odds of a big 50 basis point rate cut have jumped to 57%, which will likely lead to Donald Trump feeling very annoyed, as rate cuts usually benefit the party that's currently in power, even though they're not responsible for it. Staying overseas, Wall Street and Britain were relatively upbeat, while markets in Japan and China were closed for public holidays. And back home, Alcoa jumped nearly 6% after announcing plans to sell its 25% stake in a Saudi aluminium operation for $1.6 billion. And at $143, Commonwealth Bank is close to hitting a new record. Now, that bank's an interesting one. When you compare CBA's share price with analyst estimates of how much it's expected to earn over the next year, it looks a bit overvalued, especially compared to the All Ords, BHP, JP Morgan, which is America's biggest bank, by the way, and even tech giants like Google, which have a lot more growth potential, especially in the world of AI. Now, in commodities, the price of gold hit a fresh record high, while oil and iron ore fell, and the Aussie dollar is buying 67.2 US cents. And that's finance.
Coming up on 7:30 with Laura Tingle, the builders going bust, leaving Australians without a home.
My gut was telling me that the big red flags were obviously popping up.
Insolvencies in the construction sector are at historic highs.
It's pretty disappointing to see the building the way it is at the moment.
All our materials have just skyrocketed.
And I'll speak to the Federal Housing Minister, Claire O'Neill.
Australian Oscar Piastri has claimed a Formula One win for the second time in his career. The McLaren driver triumphed after an epic duel with Ferrari's Charles Leclerc.
The Aussie flag flying high. Oscar Piastri, the toast of the Formula One world. The 23-year-old Victorian took the checkered flag for just the second time in his burgeoning career.
It's the Aussie on top in Baku.
To move up to fourth on the drivers' standings and elevate McLaren to the top of the team's championship.
Yeah, I think considering where we started when I joined the team last year, we were literally last, and now we are leading the World Championships.
The Aussie started from second on the grid.
And foot to the floor as we go racing in Baku.
And on lap 20, he made his move.
Piastri down the inside, late on the brakes, makes the move stick. And Piastri takes the lead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Went for a pretty big lunge, but managed to pull it up and then hung on for dear life for the next 35 laps.
Ferrari's Charles Leclerc tried valiantly to wrestle the lead back. Piastri would persevere. When Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz had a horror crash late, the Aussie would cruise to victory under a safety flag.
Results like this definitely weren't possible 12 months ago for myself, so it's a massive team effort, and yeah, excited to see what the future holds.
For a youngster in just his second Formula One season, that is certainly an exciting proposition. Next up for Piastri, the Singapore Grand Prix next week. Daniel Garb, ABC News.
In the NRL, teams are back at training ahead of this week's sudden death semi-finals in Sydney. The Cowboys are prepping to put their strong away record to the test, while the Roosters gear up for their first do-or-die finals game.
North Queensland's home final delivered another masterclass from departing Cowboys winger Kyle Feldt.
Feldt with the big play for the Cowboys.
When I was running, to see the crowd up on their feet and seeing all the flags fly, it was a moment I'll remember for a long time.
After eliminating Newcastle, the crusade continues.
I'm letting it sink in a little bit more. I'm really enjoying taking it week by week and day by day a little bit more and not looking too far ahead.
The Cowboys will face the Sharks in Sydney on Friday in a game that will test their away from home record. Perfecting their approach to travel has been central to North Queensland's success this season. So far, they've won more games away than at home.
It's your personal obligation to give yourself to the team on away trips and make sure your routine's quite similar to home. So maybe the boys are doing that.
The Tricolours struggled against the Panthers without forward Jared Warrior-Hargraves, but the forceful Roosters prop will make a timely return from suspension this week.
I know we would have heard from him watching us on the weekend, and I know he's going to bring that for us.
Tedesco marks 250 NRL games in Saturday's sudden death semi-final against Manly.
It's an important game to sort of celebrate it in, but yeah, I'm obviously proud of the journey and there's still plenty to go.
Part of that journey is a 2024 finals campaign the skipper hopes will last another week. Chloe Shumicki, ABC News.
A near full-strength Geelong is facing a selection dilemma ahead of Saturday night's preliminary final against Brisbane. Star player Tom Stewart is likely to return, but it's far less clear whether the Cats will pick veterans Cam Guthrie and Tom Hawkins.
Chris Scott will be doing a lot of walking and talking this week. The Cats coach has tough decisions to make. At the top of the list, a retiring champion pushing for one last hurrah.
It's so touch and go with, the timing of how his foot is healing.
A sore foot has sidelined Tom Hawkins since late June. The 35-year-old recently returned via the VFL and is pressing his case for a senior return against the Lions.
I'm lucky I don't have to sit in the committee and make the big decisions, but he's given himself every chance, and that's all you can ask for from a great teammate.
Cam Guthrie is another veteran pushing for selection. Young, tall Sam de Koning could be recalled, while important midfielder Tom Stewart appears fit and will almost certainly return.
It's great to have a full team at this time of year, but it's a challenging time as well.
Sydney is facing its own selection dilemma as it prepares for Port Adelaide. The Swans must replace captain Callum Mills, who injured his hamstring in a training mishap.
It was disappointing. It was, he's, as we know, a very important player for us. We can't replace his leadership ability. He's very good in that space, but we've got some options there.
John Longmire says coaching is a tough job after Ken Hinkley was fined $20,000 for instigating a verbal altercation with Hawthorn players on Friday night.
Coach is at the front and centre of a lot of things. Kenny's done a fantastic job with that football team.
The Power are doing their best to move on.
It happened, it got dealt with, and now we're done with it.
Tom Maddox, ABC News.
Australia have lost to Spain 2-1 in their last Men's Tennis Davis Cup group match in Valencia. Jordan Thompson lost the opening rubber to Pablo Carreño Busta 2-6, 6-2, 7-6. Alexei Popyrin levelled the tie with a 6-4, 6-4 victory over Pedro Martinez. Matt Ebden and Max Purcell then lost the deciding doubles rubber to Martinez and Marcel Granollers 5-7, 6-4, 6-4. Both sides already progressed to the finals in November with victories in their previous ties. The Australian Diamonds have arrived in Adelaide ahead of their first international match of the season. The Diamonds face England at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre on Thursday night in the first game of their 3-test netball series. It's the first time the national team has played in South Australia since 2017. Thunderbird star Georgie Horgis is a chance to make her national debut and says it would be special to do some in her home state.
The girls are saying that they haven't played in Adelaide for a long time, so I'm really lucky that the game is in Adelaide, and to debut here would be really special. I've got lots of family and friends coming, so fingers crossed.
Weather now with Jenny Woodward. And Jenny, it's been unusually chilly in the north today.
Yes, Talissa, those temperatures are on a roller coaster this month. In the north, some places had their coldest September day in 15 years, and it's all due to this very big cloud mass, which has brought some light rain too. Just 24 in Cairns and Mareeba, but the highest still a very hot 35 at Century Mine. Now, the cloud blanket produced a warm night, the figures up to 8 degrees above average, but we had clear skies to the south, so Roma was 8 degrees below this morning on 4.1. While Applethorpe was just 0.5, and there were some areas of light frost about. Quite a cool day in that southerly air mass, 23 the top in St George and just 19 in Applethorpe. Brisbane ranged from 13 to 24, but we were into single figures this morning in the west, 9 in Ipswich and 6 at Gatton. And the cooler days meant it was perfect snuggling weather in the city. Thanks, John, for this adorable photo. Jeanette was enjoying last night's sunset at Bjelke-Petersen Dam. Cliff was up early and caught the morning light in Cunnamulla, and Valerie took a walk over the new Neville Bonner Bridge today. Well, let's have a look at the satellite, and much of the territory is covered by cloud too, and we've got another frontal system heading up towards Tasmania. Cold winds and showers have prompted sheep grazier alerts in New South Wales today, and this morning Canberra started on -7. It'll be warmer tomorrow, -1 and a top of 19 degrees, a sunny 22 for Sydney, and Alice Springs heading for 25 degrees. Onto the chart, and here's the trough that brought all the cloud and those showers to the north, but most of the state is under the influence of the big southern high. It's keeping our weather fine, clear and stable, and allowing those overnight temperatures to plunge. So we could see some frost again tomorrow morning, but the numbers will start to rise again later in the week as the next trough comes through from the west. In the meantime, showers persisting over the northern tropics. Heavier falls will be on the coastal fringe, and there's a strong wind warning north of Mackay. Let's check forecasts, and cloudy skies across the north, few light showers in the northwest, but totals of up to 15 millimetres on the Cassowary coast. Sunny skies over the southern and central interior, some early frost about the Maranoa, the Warrego and into the Carnarvons. We've got 2 to 25 in Roma. Frost about the Downs and Granite Belt too. There'll be some fog areas close to the coast, but then a mostly sunny day, but there will be a couple of light coastal showers, 23 on the Sunshine Coast. For Brisbane, mostly sunny, easterly winds, 12 to 24 degrees, down to 6 overnight in Ipswich and 7 for Beaudesert. Southerly Southerlies to 15 knots, east-southeasterly from late morning, and then seas under a metre. Looking ahead, some cloud about, early fog Wednesday and a couple of showers on the weekend, but Talissa warming up on the weekend.
Thanks, Jenny. That's news for the moment. Thanks for your company. Have a good night.